served 3 years active duty in the U.S. Army from 1968 to 1971. He attended boot camp at Fort Gordon, Georgia, AIT school at Fort Bliss, Texas, where he trained on maintaining Hawk missile guidance systems. He was assigned to the Army Air Defense Command after his basic training. Duty stations were South Korea, 1969 to 1970. Then he was assigned to Homestead Air Force Base in Key Largo from 1970 to 1971. During his time of service, he received the National Defense Service Medal, the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, and the Good Conduct Medal. Please welcome Alex Stavisky.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone hears me all right. Today, we honor those who have given their lives and given their futures so that we can live and enjoy the freedoms of this great land. On this day, millions of Americans will attend Memorial Day services across our nation. Many of us will attend services in small towns and villages we have come to call home. Unlike most holidays, usually observed as joyous occasions, today is a day of respect, reflection, and reverence. It is also a day that will stir a variety of emotions in many of us. To some, it will not only be a day to honor the fallen, but it will also be a day to offer service once again, as with our proud veterans who are participating in today's services, many of whom have done so year after year. Today, some of us will reflect on the experiences of military service. Some will recall the loss of a family member or friend. Today, I recall finding my friend's name on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Words can never describe the flood of emotions one feels at that instant of time. For our young, who are just beginning their life experiences, this day can be a day of opportunity. An opportunity for a learning experience. We must ask ourselves, what do we want our new generation to take away from today's services? Because what they see and hear today will become part of what shapes the character of our nation. With that thought in mind, it is those learning experiences in my life and that of my family that I would like to share today. Growing up in Lopez was truly growing up in small town America. For our generation, also known as baby boomers, Lopez was our world. Not the hustle bustle of city life, but a little village full of everyday true life experiences. Everything we needed was right here. We had employment with the Weldon Pajama Factory and the Endicott Shoe Company just over the hill in Mildred. Those $1 an hour jobs fed a lot of families and a lot of kids. We had a school, churches, and 2 grocery stores. We had a well-worn baseball diamond. And with the many trails, swimming holes, camping spots, and creeks, which we pronounce crick, there were plenty of places for a kid to explore. Also, with 3 taverns, Lopez had nightlife. Doc Saul from Dewshore would travel here on Saturday to visit his patients. And no matter what medication he gave you, it always seemed to cost just $3. One of the first Memorial Day services I attended is still clear in my mind. I remember being allowed to ride my bicycle to town that morning if I took the baseball cards off the spoked wheels and promised not to get in the way. I did my best. It was in the mid-50s. Lopez had many more residents back then. It seemed to me that we had as many people in the parade and ceremony as there were observers. So much so that I recall riding my bike alongside the parade so as not to feel left out. And I was not alone. Kids were everywhere. We had the Turnpike High School marching band. I can still see those glimmering uniforms as they proudly marched down Main Street. We had floats, 4-H club marchers, young girls all dressed up on hayrides, Legionnaires, our VFW, the Ladies Auxiliary, the Lopez fire truck. And as I understand, on at least one occasion, Mrs. Bork's milking cows even got in the parade.
Yeah.
Mayberry had nothing on Lopez. One thing that stood out to me were the soldiers that marched. Those were the faces I saw every day. But on this day, they looked very different. They were dressed in their vintage military uniforms, combat boots, some with gaiters strapped tight, many rifles, flags flying, and banners waving. Seeing the proud look on their faces, hearing the sounds of the cadence of their steps, the detail of the organization, it was all unique to me at the time. Something was far different than usual on this day. Reflecting back to those days, there was a time when World War II was still fresh in people's memories. Many of our town's men had brought back the scars of battle with them. You could just see how proud we were as Americans. America had played a major role in winning the freedom for the world. And the excitement of that hard-earned victory could be seen in everything we did. Our nation had never been stronger. Our nation had never been more proud. Our nation had never been more united. Little did I know that would come to be called the greatest generation was here in Lopez, standing right in front of me. It was also a time when women's voices were stronger than ever. Women were a growing part of the workforce after proving to be an invaluable part of the war effort. With over 12 million of our most able-bodied men in military service, women were called upon to do the many rugged jobs needed to support the war effort. Without their hard work and determination, our military position would never have made the difference. Surely many more lives would have been lost. You only have to remember the posters of Rosie the Riveter. As my wife, Virginia, and I raised our family in Pennsylvania, we attended almost every Memorial Day event in this little village of Lopez. We even had our own spot, just a few steps away from the cement stairs leading up to the memorial. And for our children, Cindy and Mike, Attending these services would become that valuable learning experience. Our family tradition was that after the Memorial Day service, we would go up to St. Vladimir Cemetery over Jacksonville to pay our respects. All the Stavisky side of the family are resting there. It was on one of those days, on the drive up that steep cemetery hill, that my daughter, Cindy, about 8 years old, said, "Hey, Dad." "Yes," and I replied, "Why did they have to die?" As I started with a simple explanation about the circle of life, she abruptly stopped me and said, "No, Dad, the soldiers. What the man said at the parade," meaning that day's speaker. Why did the soldiers have to die? It was at that moment I realized two things. One, that an 8-year-old was listening. And two, my wife and I now had another very important challenge added to our job description as parents. Continuing to attend the Memorial Day services here in little old Lopez would eventually provide our children with many of those hard-to-answer questions. It would provide context and understanding for the many sacrifices that our military men and women make for our country to continue to keep its freedoms. It would provide the foundations for patriotism and civic pride. It would shape an understanding for our time-honored traditions and love of country. And finally, it would build what has become an everlasting respect for our great American flag. Thank you.